The lone wolf found an omega with the sign, cursed and ownerless, and howled her name. No one ever wanted her, but when he saw her, his instincts screamed. Subscribe to the channel to discover the secret only an alpha could break. The morning mist clung to Silver Creek's pine forests, like secrets refusing to be told. Marcus Kane stood at his cabin's window, watching the fog roll through the valley as his coffee grew cold in his hands. 3 years had passed since Luna's death, yet every sunrise felt like opening an old wound that refused to heal. The alpha's reflection stared back from the glass, broad shoulders carrying invisible weight, dark hair streaked with premature silver, and eyes that once held warmth now resembled winter storms. His pack respected him, feared him even, but Marcus knew the truth that kept him awake during the long nights. He was breaking apart, piece by piece. "Marcus." Eleanor's voice cut through his brooding as she entered without knocking, a privilege earned through years of friendship and her role as pack healer. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, concern etched across her olive features. The morning patrol found something unusual near Devil's Ridge. He turned slowly, setting his mug aside. Define unusual. Human scent, but Eleanor hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Mixed with something else. Something that made Jake's wolf whine and retreat. They want you to investigate personally. Marcus felt his wolf stir beneath his skin, responding to the tension in Elena's voice. In their supernatural world, few things made experienced werewolves retreat. How far? 20 minutes if you shift. Marcus, there's something else. She stepped closer, lowering her voice despite them being alone. The scent signature. Jake described it as omega in distress, but that's impossible. There haven't been true omegas in our territory for decades. The alpha's jaw tightened. Omegas were rare, precious beings whose very presence could strengthen pack bonds and calm aggressive wolves. They were also incredibly vulnerable, making them targets for those who would exploit their gifts. The thought of one being in distress in his territory sent protective instincts surging through his bloodstream. Gather a small team. Elena, James, and Connor only. No one else approaches until we know what we're dealing with. Marcus was already moving toward his bedroom to change into clothes suitable for shifting. Marcus, wait. Elena caught his arm. Your wolf has been unstable since Luna died. If this really is an omega in distress, the protective drive could what? Make me more dangerous than I already am. His laugh held no humor. My wolf is the least of anyone's concerns, Elena. If someone has hurt an innocent in my territory, they'll discover exactly how unstable I can be. 15 minutes later, Marcus burst through the tree line in his massive black wolf form, his packmates struggling to keep pace. His enhanced senses immediately caught the scent trail, complex, layered with fear, pain, and underneath it all, something that made his wolf howl with recognition and longing. The smell grew stronger as they climbed the rocky outcropping of Devil's Ridge, leading them to a small clearing where ancient pines formed a natural cathedral. What Marcus saw there would haunt him forever. A young woman hung unconscious from a low branch, her wrists bound with rough rope, feet barely touching the ground. She wore a simple white dress, now torn and stained with dirt and blood. Her auburn hair fell like a curtain across her face, but it was the crude wooden sign hung around her neck that made Marcus's wolf rage with fury. Unclaimed and cursed. Beware. Marcus shifted back to human form so quickly that his bones popped in protest. His packmates followed suit, but he barely registered their presence as he strode toward the hanging figure, every protective instinct screaming. "Stay back," he commanded, his alpha voice brooking no argument as he approached the unconscious woman. Up close, her scent was even more intoxicating, lavender and rain, with an undertone that sang directly to his wolf's soul. Definitely omega, but unlike any he'd encountered. With careful hands he lifted her slight frame to relieve the pressure on her wrists, then used his claws to slice through the rope. She collapsed against his chest, her breathing shallow but steady. This close, he could see delicate features marred by exhaustion, and what looked like days of exposure to the elements. "She's been here at least 2 days," Connor observed, keeping his distance as Marcus had ordered. The younger wolf's nose wrinkled. But the scent trail, it's like she appeared out of nowhere. Elena approached cautiously, her healer instincts overriding pack protocol. "Let me examine her, Marcus. She needs medical attention." "No." The word came out as a low growl. Marcus's arms tightened protectively around the stranger, his wolf snarling at the suggestion of anyone else touching her. The reaction surprised him. He hadn't felt such fierce protectiveness since Luna. Alpha. Elena's voice was firm, but understanding. Your wolf is responding to her omega nature, but she could have internal injuries. Let me help her. The woman in his arms stirred, a soft whimper escaping her lips. Marcus watched, transfixed, as long lashes fluttered open to reveal eyes the color of storm-tossed seas, grey-green and ancient despite her young face. Where? Her voice was barely a whisper, confusion clouding her features as she tried to focus. When her gaze met his, Marcus felt something click into place in his chest like a lock finding its key. You're safe, he said, his usually commanding voice gentled. I'm Marcus. Can you tell me your name? She blinked slowly, her brow furrowing with effort. I don't... Panic began to creep into her expression. I don't remember. Why can't I remember? It's all right. Marcus found himself speaking in the same soothing tone he'd once used with injured pack cubs. You've been through trauma. Memory loss isn't uncommon. The woman, girl, really, he could see now that she was likely in her early 20s, tried to sit up in his arms. The movement caused her dress to shift, revealing angry rope burns on her wrists and what looked like claw marks across her collarbone. Elena sucked in a sharp breath. Those aren't random injuries, Marcus. Someone did this deliberately. The sign. James spoke up for the first time, his young voice tight with anger. Someone wanted her found like this. It's a message. Marcus studied the crude wooden placard that had fallen to the ground when he cut her down. The words were burned into the wood with what smelled like wolfsbane, a plant toxic to their kind. Someone had wanted to ensure no werewolf would approach this woman willingly. What does cursed mean? The woman asked, following his gaze to the sign. Her voice was stronger now, though he could feel tremors running through her small frame. Nothing that concerns you, Marcus said firmly, rising to his feet with her still in his arms. Elena, my cabin. Connor, James, scout the perimeter. Look for any trace of who did this. Marcus, wait. The woman's hand pressed against his chest, surprisingly warm despite her ordeal. I may not remember my name, but I'm not helpless. I can walk. He looked down at her, noting the stubborn tilt of her chin despite the exhaustion in her eyes. Strong omega, his wolf observed with approval. But when Marcus set her carefully on her feet, she swayed immediately, her legs unable to support her weight. Without hesitation, he swept her back into his arms. Walking can wait until you've eaten and rested. I should protest, she murmured against his shoulder as he began the trek back toward his cabin. But everything hurts, and you smell like safety. The simple statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen as safety rather than a threat. His wolf preened under the unconscious trust she showed, already making plans to ensure she never felt unsafe again. As they descended through the forest, neither of them noticed the yellow eyes watching from the shadows, or the satisfied smile that spread across Victor Blackwood's scarred face as he observed the Silver Creek Alpha carrying his carefully placed gift home. Marcus's cabin sat in a natural clearing, built from local timber and stone to blend seamlessly with the forest around it. As he carried the mysterious woman up the front steps, she lifted her head to study the structure with curious eyes. It's beautiful, she said softly. Peaceful, like somewhere you'd go to heal. That was the intention, Marcus replied, surprised by her perceptiveness. He'd built this place after Luna's death, needing space away from the main pack house to process his grief. The irony that he was now bringing another woman here wasn't lost on him. Inside, the cabin was masculine but comfortable. Leather furniture arranged around a stone fireplace, bookshelves lining the walls, and large windows that let in the filtered forest light. Marcus settled her carefully on the couch, then moved to light the fire, needing something to occupy his hands. What should I call you? She asked, pulling a throw blanket around her shoulders. Since I can't remember my own name. Marcus glanced back at her. In the warm light, he could see more details. The delicate bone structure that spoke of good breeding, the way she held herself despite her exhaustion suggesting an inner strength. Her auburn hair caught the firelight like burnished copper. What feels right to you? He asked, feeding kindling to the growing flames. She was quiet for a long moment, her storm-colored eyes distant. Aria, she said finally. It feels familiar somehow. Aria. Marcus tested the name, found it suited her. It means air, song, appropriate for an omega. Her head tilted. You keep using that word, omega. What does it mean exactly? Elena's arrival interrupted his explanation. The healer bustled in, carrying a medical bag and a basket of supplies, her expression professionally focused. How are you feeling, dear? Elena asked, approaching slowly. Marcus noticed how she kept her posture non-threatening, her scent carefully neutral. Good instincts around a traumatized omega. Like I've been used as a punching bag, then left to dry in the forest, Arya replied with surprising humor. But alive thanks to your alpha. Elena's eyebrows rose at the casual way Arya referred to Marcus's status. You know about pack hierarchy? Arya's brow furrowed. I don't know how I know. It's like having information without the memories that should come with it. Marcus and Elena exchanged glances. Selective memory loss was uncommon in their world, usually the result of trauma or supernatural interference. Neither possibility boded well. May I examine you? Elena asked. I'm a trained healer. I just want to make sure there are no serious injuries. Arya nodded, and Marcus forced himself to retreat to the kitchen to give them privacy, though his wolf paced restlessly at the separation. He could hear Elena's gentle questions and Arya's responses as he prepared food, something simple but nourishing. Marcus. Elena appeared in the kitchen doorway 20 minutes later, her expression troubled. Can I speak with you privately? They stepped onto the back deck, where Elena immediately began speaking in low, urgent tones. Those aren't ordinary injuries, Marcus. The claw marks are precise, ritualistic, and there's something else. She has scars, old ones, that look like binding marks. This woman has been held captive before. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. How long ago? Months, maybe years. They're well-heeled but distinctive. Someone has been controlling her for a long time. Elena paused. There's more. Her omega pheromones are unusual, stronger than anything I've encountered, but also layered with something I can't identify. It's like her scent signature has been deliberately altered. Altered how? I don't know. But Marcus, whatever was done to her, it's why that sign called her cursed. Someone wanted us to fear approaching her. Through the window, they could see Arya curled on the couch, staring into the fire with an expression of profound sadness. Something about her posture tugged at Marcus's protective instincts. She stays here, he said firmly, under my protection. Marcus, think about this rationally. If someone went to this much trouble to place her in our territory, it's a trap. You're playing right into their hands. Then let them come. His voice carried the deadly promise of an alpha who had already lost too much. Anyone who hurts the innocent in my territory will learn why Silver Creek has been unchallenged for 50 years. Elena sighed, recognizing the stubborn set of his jaw. At least let me stay tonight. Someone should monitor her condition, and your wolf is too attached already to make medical decisions clearly. Marcus wanted to argue, but Elena was right. Already he could feel the possessive instincts building, the need to keep Arya close and safe, overwhelming his usual logical approach. They returned inside to find Arya had fallen asleep on the couch, her face finally peaceful in the firelight. Marcus automatically moved to check on her, adjusting the blanket and brushing a strand of hair from her face with surprising gentleness. She's getting under your skin, Eleanor observed quietly. She's packed now, Marcus replied, though they both knew it was more complicated than that. That makes her my responsibility. And if she's dangerous? If her presence here brings trouble to Silver Creek? Marcus looked down at Arya's sleeping form, so small, so vulnerable despite the strength he sensed beneath the surface. His wolf had already made its decision, even if his rational mind was still catching up. Then we'll face that trouble together, he said simply. So to the Marcus Arya woke to the sound of rain against windows and the scent of coffee brewing. For a moment she felt disoriented. The room was unfamiliar, the bed softer than anything she could remember. Then the events of the previous day came flooding back. The forest, the sign around her neck, Marcus's protective arms carrying her to safety. Sitting up slowly, she realized she was in what appeared to be Marcus's bedroom, wearing an oversized flannel shirt that smelled like him, pine, leather, and something uniquely masculine that made her wolf stir restlessly. Wait, her wolf? The thought stopped her cold. Why had she thought of it that way? The strange certainty that she had a wolf within her felt as natural as breathing, yet she couldn't remember ever shifting or even seeing her wolf form. Another mystery, she murmured to herself, padding barefoot toward the main room. She found Marcus at the kitchen counter, his dark hair still damp from a shower, wearing jeans and a black Henley that emphasized his broad shoulders. He looked up as she approached, and she caught something unguarded in his expression before his usual controlled mask slipped back into place. "How did you sleep?" he asked, pouring her a cup of coffee without asking if she wanted it. Somehow he'd known she would. "Better than I have in—" She paused, realizing she had no frame of reference for comparison. "Well, better than I apparently have in a while. Thank you for letting me use your bed. You needed the rest." "I took the couch." Marcus handed her the mug, their fingers brushing briefly. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her system, making her omega instincts hum with contentment. "You didn't have to do that. This is your home, and you're my guest. It's not negotiable." The firm way he said it brooked no argument, and Arya found herself oddly comforted by his protective instincts rather than chafed by them. Another puzzle piece that didn't quite fit with her fragmented sense of self. Elena emerged from what appeared to be a guest room, looking professionally alert despite the early hour. "How are you feeling, Arya? Any dizziness, nausea, memory flashes?" "I feel better, stronger." Arya took a sip of coffee, savoring the warmth. "But the memories are still gone. It's like having a book with all the important pages torn out." "Memory loss after trauma isn't uncommon," Elena said gently. "Sometimes the mind protects itself by blocking painful experiences. But what if I don't want protection? What if I need to remember even if it hurts?" Marcus moved closer, his presence both comforting and distracting. "Why would you need to remember pain?" "Because someone went to a lot of trouble to make sure I'd be found with that sign. This isn't random, is it? Someone wanted me here, in your territory." Arya looked between them. "I may not remember my past, but I'm not naive. This feels like the beginning of something, not the end." A knock at the front door interrupted their conversation. Marcus immediately moved to place himself between Arya and the entrance, his body language shifting to pure alpha protectiveness. "Expecting someone?" Elena asked, her hand moving instinctively toward the silver knife at her belt. "No." Marcus's voice carried a low growl of warning. "Arya, go to the bedroom and lock the door." "I'm not hiding while you face potential danger," she said, surprising herself with her firmness. "You're injured and vulnerable. This isn't a debate. I'm also apparently the reason for whatever's happening. Running away won't solve anything." The knock came again, more insistent this time. Through the windows, Arya could see a tall figure on the porch, a man with silver hair and an expensive coat that seemed out of place in the rustic setting. "Victor!" Marcus snarled, recognition and anger warring in his voice. "Who's Victor?" Arya asked, though something about the name sent a chill down her spine. "The Alpha of the Blackwood Pack, our neighboring territory." Elena's voice was tight with tension. What would he want here? Marcus was already moving toward the door, every line of his body radiating controlled aggression. Only one way to find out. He yanked the door open, not bothering with pleasantries. "Victor, you're a long way from home." "Marcus, my old friend." Victor's voice was smooth as silk, cultured in a way that spoke of old money and older power. "I heard you found something that belongs to me." Arya's blood ran cold. Somewhere in the depths of her fractured memories, that voice stirred echoes of fear and pain. "Nothing in my territory belongs to you," Marcus replied, his tone deadly calm. Victor's pale eyes shifted past Marcus to where Arya stood frozen in the living room. When their gazes met, his smile was sharp as a blade. "Hello, little dove," he said softly. "Did you really think you could hide from me forever?" The coffee mug slipped from Arya's nerveless fingers, shattering on the wooden floor as memories came crashing back. A cage, silver chains, Victor's voice promising that she'd never escape, that she was his to command, his perfect weapon, and underneath it all the terrible truth she hadn't just been his captive, she'd been his mate. The silence that followed Victor's words was deafening. Arya felt the world tilt around her as fragmented memories crashed together like broken glass. A gilded cage, silver chains burning her wrists, Victor's hands that could be gentle one moment and cruel the next. The mate bond she'd tried so desperately to break. "Get off my property," Marcus commanded, his alpha voice carrying enough power to make the windows rattle. "Now!" Victor chuckled, stepping uninvited into the cabin with the confidence of someone who'd never been denied. "Such hostility, Marcus. And here I thought we could handle this civilized. After all, we both know Arya came here of her own free will." "That's not true," Arya whispered, though even as she said it, doubt crept in. Had she escaped, or had she been allowed to leave? The distinction suddenly felt crucial. "Isn't it, little dove?" Victor's pale eyes fixed on her with predatory intensity. "Tell them how you begged me to let you go, how you promised you'd do anything, be anything, if I just gave you your freedom." Marcus moved to stand between them, his massive frame blocking Victor's view of Arya. "Whatever arrangement you think you have, it's void. She's under my protection now." "Your protection?" Victor's laugh was like breaking glass. "From what?" "I'm her mate, Marcus. Bonded, claimed, marked. The only reason she's breathing is because I allow it." Eleanor had moved to Arya's side, her healing instincts recognizing the signs of an impending panic attack. "Breathe," she whispered. "Remember where you are. You're safe here." But Arya wasn't sure that was true anymore. Memories were surfacing faster now. Victor's estate with its beautiful gardens and terrible dungeons, the other Omegas who'd disappeared when they displeased him, the experiments he'd conducted trying to enhance Omega abilities. "The curse," she said suddenly, the pieces clicking together. "You cursed me, that's what the sign meant." Victor's smile was cold triumph. "Clever girl. Though curse is such an ugly word, I prefer enhancement. You always were my most successful project." "Project?" Marcus's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. "Oh, you didn't know?" Victor moved around Marcus like he was discussing the weather. "Arya isn't just any Omega, my friend. She's been modified. Decades of careful breeding, genetic manipulation and conditioning have created something quite extraordinary. A weapon disguised as a gift." The room seemed to spin around Arya as more memories surfaced. The needles, the experiments, the way her Omega abilities had grown stronger and more dangerous under Victor's care. She could influence not just individual wolves, but entire packs, could calm or enrage, heal or destroy, depending on her emotional state. "You're lying," Marcus said, but Arya could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Am I? Tell me, Marcus, how did it feel when you first caught her scent? Like finding something you'd lost, perhaps? A perfect match for your wounded alpha soul?" Victor's eyes gleamed. "That's not accident or fate. That's careful engineering." Eleanor stepped forward, her healer's training allowing her to see what others might miss. "The scent alterations I detected. You modified her pheromones to be irresistible to specific targets. Among other things." Victor straightened his expensive coat. "Arya's body produces compounds that can override an alpha's natural resistance to Omega influence, very useful for negotiations." Arya felt sick. Everything she'd experienced with Marcus, the instant connection, the protective instincts he'd shown, the way she'd felt safe in his arms, had it all been artificial? A cruel manipulation designed by the man who'd tormented her? "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why did you let me go if I'm so valuable?" Victor's expression softened in a mockery of affection. "Because, little dove, even the most beautiful cages become prisons eventually. I needed you to choose me willingly, to come back because you wanted to, not because you were forced." "I'll never come back to you," Arya said, finding strength in her anger. "Won't you?" Victor pulled a small device from his coat pocket, something that looked like a remote control. "You see, all those enhancements came with certain safeguards, insurance policies, if you will." He pressed a button, and Arya screamed. Pain lanced through her skull like lightning, driving her to her knees. It felt like every nerve in her body was on fire, like her very bones were trying to tear themselves apart from the inside. Marcus lunged forward, but Victor held up a warning hand. "I wouldn't, if I were you. The neural implant is quite delicate. Too much stress, and it could cause permanent damage or death." "You bastard," Marcus snarled, dropping to Arya's side as she convulsed in agony. "The pain will stop when she agrees to come home," Victor said calmly. "It's really quite simple. Though I should mention, the longer she resists, the more damage it causes. Eventually it will kill her." Eleanor was already reaching for her medical bag, but Victor shook his head. "Nothing you have will help, I'm afraid. The implant is beyond modern medicine." Through the agony, Arya heard Marcus's voice. "There has to be another way. Name your price." "My price?" Victor pretended to consider. "Well, I have always admired your territory, Marcus. Silver Creek has such potential. Perhaps we could arrange a trade. Your pack's submission for one little Omega's life. The pain intensified, and Arya felt consciousness slipping away, but not before she heard Marcus's response, quiet and deadly as winter frost. Deal. No. Arya gasped through the pain, forcing herself to stay conscious through sheer will. Marcus, no, don't give him what he wants. But the damage was done. She could see the Alpha's resolve in his steel-grey eyes, the way his protective instincts had overridden his strategic mind. Victor's smile was pure satisfaction as he released the button, and the agony mercifully stopped. Excellent choice, Marcus. I do so appreciate when negotiations can be concluded without unnecessary bloodshed. Victor pocketed the remote with casual cruelty. Though I should clarify the terms. I'm not simply asking for submission. I want full territorial rights, pack integration, and your personal oath of fealty. Elena helped Arya to a sitting position, her healer's hands checking for lasting damage. Marcus, you can't seriously be considering this. I've already decided. Marcus stood, his expression carved from granite. When do you want the ceremony? Oh, tonight will be sufficient. Midnight at the old stone circle. Neutral ground as tradition demands. Bring your pack leaders as witnesses. Victor adjusted his coat, clearly pleased with how easily his plan had succeeded. And Marcus, any attempt at trickery, and little Arya's pretty head will simply pop. The casual way he said it made Arya's stomach lurch. She'd seen Victor's cruelty firsthand, knew he'd follow through on any threat without hesitation. You have my word, Marcus said simply. After Victor left, the cabin fell into heavy silence. Eleanor busied herself with checking Arya's vitals, while Marcus stared out the window with the expression of a man calculating odds he didn't like. There has to be another way, Arya said quietly. I won't let you sacrifice your pack for me. It's not your choice. Marcus's voice was gentle but implacable. I'm the Alpha. Protecting pack members is my responsibility. I'm not pack. I'm a weapon someone aimed at you. The words tasted bitter, but she needed him to understand. Victor engineered this entire situation. My escape, you finding me, the way I affect you, it's all been manipulation. Marcus turned from the window, his eyes intense. Do you really believe that? Arya faltered, uncertain. The connection she felt to him seemed too real, too deep to be artificial. But how could she trust her own feelings when her very biology had been weaponized? Elena, Marcus said without looking away from Arya, I need you to gather Connor, James, and Sarah. Tell them to meet us at the workshop in an hour. What are you planning? Eleanor asked suspiciously. A conversation with our resident tech expert. Marcus's smile was sharp as a blade. If Victor can use technology to control Arya, perhaps we can use technology to free her. An hour later, they stood in Connor's workshop, a converted barn filled with an eclectic mix of supernatural artifacts and cutting-edge electronics. The young werewolf was bent over a collection of monitoring equipment, sensors attached to Arya's temples, as he studied readouts on multiple screens. This is fascinating, Connor murmured, adjusting settings. The implant is definitely there. I can see the electromagnetic signature, but it's not just a pain device, it's integrated with her nervous system in ways that... He trailed off, frowning at the data. In ways that what? Marcus demanded. In ways that shouldn't be possible with current technology. This thing is interfacing directly with her brain chemistry, her hormonal production, even her emotional responses. Victor hasn't just made her a weapon, he's made her a programmable one. Arya felt cold despite the workshop's warmth. Can you remove it? Not without killing you. The neural integration is too complete. Connor looked up from his screens apologetically. But I might be able to disrupt the control signal. Block Victor's remote from triggering the pain response. For how long? Elena asked. Maybe an hour, 2 if we're lucky. Connor was already pulling components from various shelves. It would give you a window, but not a solution. Sarah, Marcus's beta and head of pack security, spoke for the first time. An hour could be enough. If we can get close to Victor without him being able to activate the device, he'll have backup plans, Marcus said grimly. Victor's survived this long because he's paranoid and thorough. The remote is probably just one way to trigger the implant. James, ever the optimist despite his youth, raised his hand tentatively. What if we don't try to fight the implant? What if we use it? Everyone turned to look at him. The young wolf flushed but continued. I mean, if Arya's abilities are as enhanced as Victor claimed, and if she can influence pack dynamics. Couldn't she turn his own people against him? That's assuming she can control her abilities, Elena pointed out, and assuming they'd work on Victor himself. They won't, Arya said quietly. Victor made sure of that. He's immune to Omega influence, one of his first modifications to himself. She looked up at Marcus. But James might be onto something. Victor's pack. They're not loyal out of love. They follow him out of fear and self-interest. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his strategic mind working through possibilities. How many in his inner circle? 6 lieutenants, plus Victor. But Marcus, even if I could influence them, using my abilities like that. Arya shuddered. It makes me just like him, a manipulator using people as tools. Sometimes the only way to fight a monster is to become one temporarily. Marcus moved to stand before her, his hands gentle as they framed her face. But the choice is yours, Arya. I won't ask you to sacrifice your principles to save my pack. Looking into his storm-grey eyes, Arya felt something shift inside her. Real or artificial, the connection between them had become something worth protecting. And more than that, Silver Creek had given her something she'd never had before, a home worth defending. Connor, she said, not breaking eye contact with Marcus, how long do you need to build your disruption device? 2 hours, maybe 3. Then we have until midnight to become monsters. Arya's smile was sharp as Victor's had been, but warmed by something the other Alpha had never possessed, the love of people willing to die for each other. Let's go save a pack. As evening fell over Silver Creek, the pack prepared for war disguised as surrender. In the main pack house, Marcus addressed his assembled wolves with the calm authority that had made him Alpha. But Arya could see the tension in his shoulders, the weight of leadership that demanded he appear confident even when facing impossible odds. Tonight, we face a choice, Marcus said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. Submit to a tyrant who would destroy everything we've built, or fight for our freedom knowing the cost could be everything. Murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves, 37 strong, ranging from teenagers to elders who'd seen decades of pack politics. Sarah stood at Marcus's right, her beta's loyalty unwavering despite the circumstances. The Blackwood pack outnumbers us 2 to 1, she reported grimly. Victor's bringing his full force, not just to witness the ceremony, but to ensure compliance. They'll surround the stone circle completely. Eleanor had spent the afternoon working with Connor on modifications to his disruption device, turning it from a crude prototype into something that might actually work. The neural blocker is ready, she announced. But remember, we get one shot at this. Once Victor realizes Arya can resist the implant, he'll find other ways to control the situation. Arya stood beside Marcus, wearing borrowed clothes that fit her slight frame. Dark jeans, boots, and a leather jacket that Elena had insisted would provide some protection. She felt like she was wearing a costume for a role she'd never auditioned for, the weapon pretending to be a savior. There's something else, she said, her voice quieter than Marcus's but carrying its own authority. Victor won't come alone to the ceremony. He'll bring his inner circle, the 6 lieutenants I mentioned. If I can influence them during the chaos— It's too dangerous, Marcus interrupted. Using your abilities on that scale with the neural disruption active, we don't know what it could do to you. We don't know what any of this will do to any of us, Arya replied, meeting his concerned gaze steadily. But I won't let your pack suffer for Victor's obsession with me. Connor looked up from his final adjustments to the device. The good news is that Victor's overconfidence might work in our favor. He thinks he has complete control over Arya, so he won't be expecting resistance. The bad news? James asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. If this goes wrong, we'll all be dead before dawn, Sarah said bluntly. Victor doesn't leave loose ends. An hour before midnight, the Silver Creek pack made their way through the forest toward the ancient stone circle that had served as neutral ground for territorial disputes for over 2 centuries. The circle sat in a natural clearing, 9 standing stones arranged around a flat altar stone that had witnessed countless pack ceremonies over the generations. Arya walked beside Marcus, the neural disruptor hidden beneath her jacket like a technological talisman. Connor had designed it to look like a simple pendant, but she could feel its subtle vibration against her chest, a reminder that their entire plan hung on untested technology and desperate hope. Whatever happens tonight, Marcus said quietly, I want you to know that meeting you, even under these circumstances, has been worth it. Don't talk like this is goodbye, Arya replied, though her own voice carried uncertainty. We're going to survive this, and then we're going to figure out what's real between us and what Victor manufactured. I already know what's real, Marcus said, stopping in the shadow of the trees surrounding the clearing. The way you fought to protect people you barely know, the strength you've shown despite everything you've suffered. That's not artificial, Arya. That's you. Before she could respond, they heard voices from the clearing ahead. Victor had arrived early, his wolves already positioned around the stone circle in a show of overwhelming force. Arya counted at least 60 Blackwood wolves, their eyes glowing amber in the moonlight as they watched the tree line for signs of approach. "Showtime," Sarah murmured, checking the silver knife at her belt one final time. They emerged from the forest in a formal procession, Marcus leading with Arya at his side, followed by his pack leaders and the rest of Silver Creek's wolves. The sight that greeted them was both magnificent and terrifying. Victor stood at the center of the circle, resplendent in a long coat that probably cost more than most people's cars, surrounded by his lieutenants like a dark court-holding audience. "Marcus, my friend," Victor called out, his voice carrying false warmth. So prompt. "I do appreciate punctuality in business dealings." "Let's get this over with," Marcus replied, his tone carefully neutral as he led his pack into the circle. Victor's pale eyes fixed on Arya, and she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "You look well, little dove. I trust your brief vacation was enlightening?" "Enlightening enough," Arya said, her hand moving unconsciously to touch the hidden disruptor. "Just a few more minutes," she told herself. "Let him think he's won." "Excellent. Then you understand why tonight's ceremony is necessary." Victor gestured grandly to the assembled wolves. "Witness the wisdom of submission over foolish pride. Marcus Kane, Alpha of Silver Creek, will you now formally surrender your territory and pledge your pack's loyalty to the Blackwood name?" The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Arya could feel the tension radiating from the Silver Creek wolves, their barely contained rage at seeing their alpha forced into this position. Marcus stepped forward, his expression carved from stone. "I, Marcus Kane, Alpha of Silver Creek, do hereby—" "Wait," Arya interrupted, stepping into the center of the circle. Every eye turned to her, and she felt the weight of their attention like a physical force. "Before this ceremony continues, I think everyone should know the truth about what Victor Blackwood really is." Victor's smile faltered for just a moment before returning full force. "Arya, darling, I don't think this is the time for—" "He's a coward," Arya said loudly, her voice carrying across the clearing. "A weak, pathetic excuse for an alpha who can only maintain power through torture and mind control." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Victor laughed, reaching into his coat for the remote control. "Oh, little dove, you really should have stayed quiet." He pressed the button, expecting to see Arya collapse in agony. Instead, she smiled. "You should have upgraded your technology, Victor. It's amazing what a smart pack can accomplish when they work together." At the moment Victor realized his control device had failed, his mask of civilized superiority cracked completely. Rage twisted his handsome features into something bestial as he snarled orders to his lieutenants. "Kill them all, starting with the Omega." But Arya was already moving, her enhanced abilities flooding through her system like wildfire. The neural disruptor had done more than just block Victor's control. It had removed the artificial constraints that had been suppressing her full power. The first wave of her influence hit Victor's inner circle like a tsunami of pure Omega dominance. 3 of his lieutenants immediately dropped to their knees, their wolves whimpering in submission as her pheromones overrode their loyalty conditioning. The remaining 3 fought back, but she could see the struggle in their eyes as their natural instincts warred with Victor's programming. "Impossible," Victor breathed, backing away as Arya advanced on him. "The safeguards should have prevented—" "The safeguards were designed to keep me weak and compliant," Arya said, her voice carrying harmonics that made every wolf in the clearing feel her words in their bones. "But you forgot something important, Victor. I'm not just your creation anymore, I'm pack." Around the circle, chaos erupted as Silver Creek wolves engaged their Blackwood counterparts. But the fight was already turning in their favor. Arya's influence was spreading through Victor's forces like wildfire, convincing wolf after wolf that their true loyalty belonged elsewhere. Marcus moved to stand beside her, his alpha presence amplifying her Omega abilities in ways Victor's scientists had never anticipated. Together, They were more than the sum of their parts, a mated pair whose bond transcended artificial manipulation. "You can't do this," Victor snarled, drawing a silver blade from his coat. "I made you, I own you. Without me, you're nothing but a broken little girl who remembers only pain." "You're right about one thing," Arya said, her storm-colored eyes blazing with inner fire. "I do remember the pain. Every needle, every cage, every time you told me I was worthless except as your tool." She reached out with her abilities, focusing all her enhanced power on Victor himself. Even with his immunity treatments, she could feel cracks in his mental defenses, places where his own wolf nature rebelled against what he'd become. "But you know what I remember most clearly?" Arya continued, forcing Victor to his knees through sheer Omega dominance. "I remember the other Omegas you killed when they couldn't meet your standards, the ones who died screaming in your laboratories while you took notes." Around them, the battle was winding down, as more and more Blackwood wolves abandoned their alpha in favor of the overwhelming rightness of Arya's presence. Even Victor's remaining loyal lieutenants were wavering, their conditioning cracking under the assault of her enhanced pheromones. "Their names were Sarah, Michael, and David," Arya said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "And you're going to pay for what you did to them." Victor tried to lunge at her with his silver blade, but Marcus intercepted him with fluid grace. The two alphas crashed together in a tangle of claws and fury, their wolves finally free to express the hatred that had been building for years. But the fight was over before it truly began. Victor's enhancements had made him stronger and faster than a normal alpha, but they'd also made him dependent on technology and fear. Marcus fought with the desperate strength of a mate protecting his Omega, and that made all the difference. When Victor fell, silver blade spinning away into the darkness, the remaining fight went out of his forces completely. Arya's influence washed over the clearing one final time, offering every Blackwood wolf a choice: continue following a fallen tyrant or find a new home with a pack that valued strength through unity rather than strength through fear. Most chose to kneel. Elena was immediately at Arya's side as the Omega swayed from the effort of maintaining such widespread influence. "Easy," the healer murmured, checking her pulse. "You've pushed your abilities beyond anything they were designed for. There could be lasting effects." "I don't care," Arya said, watching as Sarah and the other Silver Creek wolves began securing the surrendering Blackwood forces. "It was worth it to see him fall." Marcus approached, blood on his knuckles but otherwise unharmed. "Victor's alive but unconscious. What do you want to do with him?" Arya looked down at the man who had tormented her for so long, who had tried to turn her into a weapon against innocence. A part of her wanted revenge, wanted to make him suffer as he'd made so many others suffer. But another part of her, the part that had been growing stronger since Marcus found her in the forest, wanted something different. "He's going to stand trial," she said finally. "A real trial with witnesses who can testify to his crimes. The families of the Omegas he killed deserve justice, not just revenge." Marcus smiled, pride evident in his expression. "That's the woman I fell in love with." "Even if that love was artificially induced?" Arya asked, voicing the fear that had been haunting her since Victor's revelations. "Look around," Marcus said, gesturing to the clearing where Silver Creek and former Blackwood wolves were working together to tend the wounded and secure the prisoners. "This isn't artificial, Arya. This is what happens when good people choose to stand together against evil." As dawn broke over the stone circle, Arya realized he was right. Whatever Victor had done to her, whatever enhancements or modifications he'd made, the choice to use her abilities to protect rather than destroy had been entirely her own, and that made all the difference. 3 weeks after the confrontation at the Stone Circle, Silver Creek territory had transformed into something unprecedented in werewolf history. Former Blackwood wolves worked alongside their new packmates, helping to rebuild structures damaged in Victor's raids, and establishing new homes for those who'd chosen to stay. Arya stood on the deck of Marcus's cabin, watching the morning training session below where Eleanor taught former Blackwood Omegas how to defend themselves. The sight filled her with quiet satisfaction. These wolves would never again be victims, never again be weapons in someone else's war. "Penny for your thoughts," Marcus said, joining her with 2 cups of coffee. The morning ritual had become their quiet time, a peaceful interlude before the day's responsibilities claimed their attention. "I was thinking about choices," Arya replied, accepting the warm mug gratefully. "How Victor spent so much effort trying to eliminate my ability to choose, but in the end, Choice was the only thing that mattered. The trial had concluded yesterday, with Victor's conviction on 17 counts of murder and 43 counts of unlawful imprisonment. He would spend the rest of his life in the supernatural court's highest security facility, unable to harm anyone ever again. Justice for the victims and their families, exactly as Arya had wanted. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked, settling beside her on the porch swing they'd installed last week. "About the trial?" "No." "About staying here?" Arya looked up at him, her storm-colored eyes clear and certain. "Never." The decision to remain with Silver Creek hadn't been automatic, despite the connection she felt to Marcus. Connor had successfully removed Victor's neural implant in a delicate procedure that had taken 6 hours and left her unconscious for 2 days. When she'd awakened, truly free for the first time in years, she'd needed to know that her feelings were real rather than programmed responses. The weeks that followed had been a careful dance of discovery. Marcus had given her space to heal, to explore her abilities without fear, to decide for herself what kind of life she wanted, and every day, her choice had become clearer. "The integration's going well," Marcus observed, nodding toward the training ground where James was sparring with a former Blackwood lieutenant twice his size, "though I think Sarah's enjoying her expanded responsibilities a little too much." Arya laughed. Marcus's beta had taken charge of integrating the new pack members with the enthusiasm of a general organizing a campaign. The Silver Creek pack had grown from 37 wolves to nearly 90, making them one of the largest territories in the region. "She's good at it," Arya said, "and the new wolves respect her. They need structure after years of Victor's chaos." "Speaking of structure," Marcus said, his tone becoming more serious, "the Council of Alphas has made their decision about territorial boundaries. They're officially recognizing Silver Creek's claim to the former Blackwood lands. It was a significant victory. The expanded territory would provide resources for their larger pack and ensure that Victor's victims had a permanent home." But Arya could hear something else in Marcus's voice. "There's a condition, isn't there? They want assurance that your abilities won't be used to destabilize other territories. Some of the older Alphas are concerned about the precedent." Arya had expected this. Word of an Omega who could influence entire packs had spread quickly through supernatural circles, bringing both admiration and fear. She understood the concern. In the wrong hands, her abilities could indeed destabilize the careful balance of power that kept their world functioning. "What kind of assurance?" "A formal mating bond," Marcus said quietly. "Between us. It would provide the stability they're looking for while also—" He trailed off, clearly uncertain of her reaction. "While also ensuring I'm properly controlled by an alpha they trust," Arya finished, her voice sharper than she'd intended. "That's not how I see it," Marcus said quickly, "but yes, that's part of their thinking. Hurry, if you're not ready for that step, I'll find another way to satisfy the Council. Your freedom comes first." The mating bond was sacred among their kind, a spiritual and biological connection deeper than human marriage, one that would link their souls as well as their bodies. It wasn't something to be entered into lightly or for political convenience, but as Arya looked at Marcus, she realized the Council's timing might not be as calculating as it seemed. Over the past weeks, their relationship had deepened beyond the crisis that had brought them together. She'd seen him with his pack, witnessed his compassion and strength, learned that his protective instincts came from love rather than possessiveness. "What do you want, Marcus?" she asked. "Forget the Council, forget politics. What do you want?" He was quiet for a long moment, his grey eyes searching her face. "I want to wake up every morning knowing you're safe and happy. I want to support your choices, even when they scare me. I want to build something lasting with you, something that's ours, rather than something forced on us by circumstances." "And the mating bond?" "Would formalize what I already feel," he said simply, "but only if you feel it too." Arya set down her coffee and turned to face him fully. Through the cabin's open windows, she could hear the sounds of pack life, laughter from the training ground, Elena calling out medical advice, Connor explaining some new invention to fascinated listeners. It was home in a way she'd never experienced before. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily despite their weight. Not because of enhanced pheromones or artificial compatibility, because of who you are when you think no one's watching, because you gave me a choice when you could have demanded obedience. Marcus's smile was radiant. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes to everything," Arya said, laughing as he swept her into his arms. "To the mating bond, to satisfying the Council, to building something lasting together. As he spun her around the deck, Arya felt the last shadows of Victor's influence finally lifting from her heart. She was no longer a weapon or a victim, but simply a woman choosing her own destiny. And that destiny was here in Silver Creek, with the Alpha who taught her that love was the greatest freedom of all. 6 months later, the autumn air was crisp with the promise of winter as Silver Creek prepared for its first annual Unity Festival. What had started as a simple celebration to mark the successful integration of former Blackwood wolves had grown into something much larger, a symbol of hope for supernatural communities throughout the region. Arya stood in the main pavilion, watching pack members from dozens of territories mingle freely. The sight still amazed her sometimes. Where once there had been rigid hierarchy and territorial suspicion, now there was cooperation and genuine friendship. "Nervous?" Elena asked, appearing at her side with a knowing smile. As the pack's healer and Arya's closest friend, she'd become expert at reading the Omega's moods. "Excited," Arya corrected, adjusting the simple silver circlet that marked her status as Luna of Silver Creek. The mating ceremony 6 months ago had been small and private, witnessed only by their pack, but the bond between her and Marcus had grown stronger every day since. "Good, because Marcus is about to make his announcement, and I think you'll want to hear this one." Across the pavilion, Marcus stood at the raised platform that served as a stage for the evening's festivities. His presence alone was enough to quiet the assembled crowd. Nearly 300 supernatural beings representing 15 different territories. "Friends," he began, his alpha voice carrying easily across the space. 6 months ago, Silver Creek was a small pack struggling to maintain our place in a changing world. Tonight, we celebrate not just our survival, but our growth into something unprecedented. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. The story of Silver Creek's victory over Victor Blackwood had become legend in supernatural circles, inspiring other territories to reconsider their own approaches to leadership and community. "But growth isn't just about numbers," Marcus continued. "It's about evolution, about becoming something better than what we were before, which is why I'm proud to announce the formation of the Western Alliance." The pavilion erupted in excited conversation. Arya felt her breath catch. This was the first she'd heard of any alliance. 12 territories have agreed to a mutual aid compact, Marcus explained, as the noise died down. Shared resources, coordinated defense, and most importantly, a commitment to protecting the vulnerable rather than exploiting them. Sarah stepped forward, carrying a beautifully crafted wooden box. "The charter has been signed by all participating alphas," she announced, "but there's one signature missing." Marcus turned to look directly at Arya, his eyes warm with love and pride. "The Alliance needs a coordinator, someone who understands both strength and compassion, someone who's experienced the worst our kind can do, but still believes in our capacity for good." The crowd was silent now, everyone understanding the significance of the moment. Arya felt tears prick her eyes as Marcus continued. "Arya Kane, Luna of Silver Creek, will you accept the position of Alliance Coordinator?" The formal title was impressive, but Arya understood what he was really asking. This wasn't just about politics or administration. It was about using her unique abilities and experience to build something that could prevent others from suffering as she had. "I accept," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the pavilion. "On one condition." Marcus raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting conditions. "The Alliance includes a sanctuary program," Arya announced, stepping up onto the platform beside her mate. "Any Omega, any wolf, any supernatural being who needs protection will find it here. No questions asked, no payment required." The crowd's approval was thunderous. As the applause died down, Arya felt a familiar stirring in her chest, not her enhanced abilities, but something simpler and more profound: hope. Later that evening, after the last guests had departed and the pavilion had been cleaned, Arya and Marcus walked through their territory under the star-filled sky. They moved in comfortable silence, both processing the magnitude of what they'd committed to. "Second thoughts?" Marcus asked as they reached the stone circle where their lives had changed forever. "About the Alliance?" "Never." Arya settled on the grass beside the ancient altar stone, pulling Marcus down with her. "About us? Never that either." "Good," Marcus said, wrapping his arms around her, "because I have something else to tell you." "More announcements?" "I think I've reached my limit for one day. This one's personal." Marcus's voice carried a note she'd never heard before, wonder mixed with nervous excitement. Elena confirmed it this afternoon. You're pregnant. Arya went perfectly still, her hand moving instinctively to her stomach. Pregnant, she repeated, testing the word. Are you sure? Elena's sure. About 6 weeks along, she thinks. Marcus's arms tightened around her. How do you feel about that? Arya considered the question seriously. A year ago, the idea of bringing a child into the world would have terrified her. Victor's experiments had left her uncertain whether she was even capable of normal pregnancy, let alone whether any child of hers would be safe. But now, surrounded by pack and alliance, protected by laws and love rather than fear and force, everything was different. Terrified, she said honestly, and thrilled, and completely overwhelmed. All normal reactions, according to Elena. What about you? How do you feel? Marcus was quiet for a moment, his hand joining hers over the place where their child was growing. Like the luckiest alpha in the world, he said finally. Like everything we've been through was worth it to get to this moment. As they sat together in the place where their story had nearly ended, Arya thought about the journey that had brought them here. From the nightmare of Victor's control to the dream of the Alliance, from victim to survivor to leader, every step had been a choice. And now they were choosing again, to bring new life into a world they were actively working to make better, to trust in a future they were building together. I love you, she said, the words as true now as they'd been that first morning on his cabin deck. I love you too, Marcus replied. Both of you. Above them, the autumn stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, bearing witness to promises made and futures chosen. And in the distance, the lights of Silver Creek glowed warm and welcoming, a beacon of hope in a world that was finally learning to value strength through unity over strength through fear. The weapon had become a healer. The prisoner had become a leader. The curse had become the greatest blessing of all, and they lived, if not quite happily ever after, then at least courageously ever after, building something worth defending, something worth passing on to the next generation. Together.